Good morning. I had the great pleasure of talking to Mark Lynch today. Mark is with SunTrust and is a loan officer. And Mark does about a little bit over $3 million a month and has consistently for some time. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Everybody, I always start the interviews at the same time, almost use the same words, because people always want to know where people came from and how they got started in the business. So I thought we'd start off where you come from and where your market area is, and focus in on how you actually got into the business.
Okay. I live in Winchester, Virginia, which is about 50 miles due west of Washington, D.C. I got in the business back in 1992 when the refinance boom was happening, and they were throwing everybody and their brother in there to do the callback logs and call people that wanted to refinance their homes.
What did you do before?
Actually, what I did before is I worked on a fishing boat. I was in college, worked on a fishing boat on Long Island, off Long Island, and did that for since I was about 12 years old.
Wow, that's definitely interesting.
Yeah, so
tell me a little more.
I worked on a head boat, so I took people out fishing and taught them how to fish and how to, I guess, just have a good day. Entertaining. It was mostly entertaining because these people go out. I don't know, have you ever gone on a head boat before?
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah, that's exactly the guy who helps you net the fish or gaff the fish or
a mate.
A mate, exactly. Well, then I went all the way up there, got my captain's license, so I was able to run the boat. And then after graduating from college, I did it for a year, and then moved down to Williamsburg, Virginia, where my wife was attending graduate school at William Mary. And then needed to get a job, and a friend of mine at CSX told me the mortgage industry was hopping, and then I should jump into that. So I did.
So you went in blind.
I'm very blind.
I actually like talking to fellows like you for the simple reason that sometimes you kind of get thrown to the dogs, and so I'm interested, when you first started, the level of training, or was it that they give you the book and throw you out the back door?
Well,
how was your start in the business?
It was really telemarketing. So what we did was, not really, it was callback. They had, it was Crestar at the time, and Crestar had probably, we were probably 200 in the hole on calling people back about refinancing. So what they did is they gave me a stack of messages and said, would you call these people back? They wanted to talk to someone about refinancing. And if they agree to the terms that you read off this paper in terms of rate and points, fill out this piece of paper, which is called a loan application, and ask them for this documentation, and then wait till they mail it in. So it was all over the phone. So I wasn't at all calling on anybody. It was really just calling people.
There's a lot of people out there that went through, as they would say at Fort Knox, agony and misery hill. I was one of them starting off, and we're going to be very upset that you had such an easy entree, and would not forgive me if I didn't ask this next point. Did they pay you half a point to do all this?
No, of course not.
Okay.
No, it was.
I feel better.
It was pretty much, I was straight salary, and I got a little bit of incentive for it. So I did that for probably about 2 years before they asked me if I wanted to open up a branch up in Winchester, Virginia, and I didn't even know where Winchester was or know anybody in Winchester. So I said, sure, why not? I'll try it. And that's how it started. Came up here with my wife, just married, and was pretty nervous about that, but we made a real go of it.
Well, for those viewers out there that don't know Winchester, and I happen to, it's a stunningly beautiful little town. That's about 60 miles, 50 miles from D.C. As the crow flies, and in fact, you and I were talking. I always, when I go down there, visit the headquarters of Washington during the French and Indian Wars. That place right on that corner, if you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. A lot of history down there.
Yeah, absolutely a lot of history down there. Well, it's interesting. You ended up in a nice, beautiful town with low average loan amounts.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, when you first started in your business, what did you go after? Were you primarily, now I'm talking about when you got on full commission here, were you primarily going after realtors or?
Absolutely, realtor business. I mean, when I opened the office, I didn't have a callback log. I was out hustling, trying to get business in the door, and so I started Don Ehrman, who you had mentioned earlier. I started under working with Don, or for Don, and Don mainly was showing me how to get realtor business. And so I was calling on realtors, just knocking on doors and trying to meet as many people, joining as many different clubs, and sitting in a lot of different committees for the Board of Realtors and for the Top of Virginia Builders Association, sitting on lots of different community boards, and just meeting people, networking that way.
It's interesting that you started with Don Ehrman, who, you're correct, I am going to be talking to in a couple of days. Don, for those who don't know, does incredible volumes and numbers of loans. Many years he does over 500 loans apiece, and was telling me a story yesterday, actually, about how he went out to one of Todd Duncan's superstar things, and they all just literally surrounded him because he's doing these incredible numbers and he has no help. He does everything himself.
Exactly.
And everybody does those kind of numbers. They all have assistants and everything, and it was like an utter stage of disbelief. But you certainly worked under the right person.
Yeah, he certainly is definitely takes a lot of applications.
Why do you think they picked you to start an office like that? It sounds like you were...
Actually, it was funny. I was in that telemarketing group that we were division. I kept coming with the highest numbers, and was honored at a luncheon with the president of the company and senior vice presidents and other top originators in the field. And that's where I met Don Ehrman, and Don said, "Wow, this guy he definitely needs to be in Winchester." So he had talked to the president, and Don Ehrman and my now regional manager, Denny Early, put me in, said, "Hey, why don't you do this?" And I had a choice between Virginia Beach and Winchester, and I picked Winchester.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you started, you say that you started going after realtors. For those people that are new in the business, that have just been around for 3 or 4 months and times are struggling, what kind of suggestions do you have for those that are, just really getting started?
I would definitely find a mentor, somebody that I could tag along with in terms of as a top originator, and ask them. Just find out how they do their business, and as well as conduct. I'm really fortunate because Don would give me all these different tapes of different top trainers, like, for instance, Deborah Jones, who does a lot of training in the mortgage industry, or used to do a lot of training in the mortgage industry, Todd Duncan, and even just sales stuff, like Brian Tracy. But I am definitely an advocate of Todd Duncan's interview with real estate agents.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of loan officers are just showing up and throwing rate sheets and throwing donuts at real estate agents, when I think you have to sit down with them and have a serious conversation about how you can help each other's business. If that is a market that you want to go to, realtor business, I think you got to build a partnership. And that's what I've done with about 8 to 10 real estate agents. I've built a partnership with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an old saying, though, you're only as good as your last loan. In some offices, all of us have horror stories. I have mine that got ingrained in my mind many years ago with one particular office in Northern Virginia. And so developing relationships is very important. Do you feel comfortable depending just on 10 or 12 realtors?
I do, and the reason why is when I really market my database of people, my past clients, or my clients who I've previously done a loan for. I really market to them, so I try to get a lot of my business from them, and in doing that, the deal always goes back to the realtor who gave me the business. So I'm giving them a lot of business. So I feel comfortable in building their business and building my business. I think I use this saying from, I think, Todd Duncan, is I'd rather be more to few and many will want me rather than less to many. Mm-hmm. Nobody will need me, I guess, is how the saying goes. So I do feel comfortable going off with a few. And not every real estate agent do I want to work with. So I would...
What do you mean by that?
Some people that they just make your life miserable. They call on every deal. They create problems. Those realtors, I don't want to deal with. I have no desire to deal with people like that. But the good realtors have the same values I do. that want to help the customer as much as they can. They want to make them part of the community of Winchester when they come into town. They want to give them the avenues of success. And it's just, those are the people that I want to do business with, not the people that want to do it for the commission check.
You know, we don't focus on this a lot in the interviews. I don't know if it's because people are reticent to bring it up, don't want to offend or whatever, but they're realistically, I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's a subject that at least needs to be discussed, and that's the fact there are a lot of realtors out there who, in real estate agents who are not realtors, that really they're either not very good, they're very demanding, they're whining and complaining, and I think there is a point with loan officers out there, those that are listening, you have to be able to cut away those that are just negative and bring you down, even when you're getting deals from them.
Sure. I agree with that 100%. I know there's, this is not original to me. I know I've listened to several tapes of people being interviewed, top mortgage originators being interviewed, and you know, there's people out there that go out and actually fire realtors because they're not, I've not had to do that, but I just don't call them. I don't really actually ever talk to them again. I just don't ever call them back, or just kind of, it's probably not the right way to do it, but that's the way I've done it.
Well, actually, that's kind of actually, it is just the right way to do it because that's exactly the way realtors deal with loan officers who don't do right by them, and I mean that in the true sense of the word. They don't call them back. They don't keep in touch. Realtors vote with the telephone, and all of a sudden, you just don't start getting the call back. You know, there's an old saying, out of sight, out of mind, and by that, you mean in the business that, you know, if you don't show up and see these realtors and stick your pretty little face in front of them, at some point in time, they just don't make the call, and that's how they vote. So I think it can work in reverse. When you started off, how many offices do you deal with? In general?
There are about, in my market area, there are about 400 real estate agents.
And how many offices would you
probably
suppose?
About 15. When I started off, I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to call them all. So I'd set up a geographic sort of. I'd go ahead and say, hey, these 5 offices are in this, and I can hit these offices on Tuesday, and then I'll go ahead and I'll hit these other offices on Thursday. It's a fairly small market and geographically, so I can easily hit them all within 2 days. So I kind of visited pretty much on a weekly basis. Like you say, keep your pretty face in front of them. So I had to constantly be in front of them the whole time until I really started having some ahas in my life and saying, hey, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to go ahead and try to get business from every single real estate agent? Because I was really not doing business the way I wanted to do business.
And do you think that's because because I think there's life lessons out here, that's why we're talking about this. Do you think it's because you were spreading yourself too thin?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what I was
So you think there's a danger there for people getting in the business doing that?
I do, and the reason why is because you're only good as your last loan. If I start trying to get business from 30 different real estate agents or 40 different real estate agents, I'm not going to make any of them happy. What if they all send you a deal and you can't do it correctly because you can't get them back you can't call them back on time. It's easier to deal with fewer people than many, in my opinion.
But that begs the question, and I want to get back and focus on this. If that's true, okay, and I have no reason to doubt it, and I absolutely happen to believe in it, if it's better to concentrate on those few, what do you do specifically, first off, to get those few, and then to maintain them?
Good question. What I do is actually interview them to make sure I want to do business. This is pretty much I'm touting Todd Duncan because this is exactly where I got it from.
Yeah, I like it. He's one of his tapes are great.
Yeah, one of the I go ahead and I just target the people I want to do business, and I find out how to do business with them, why I want to do business with them. I talk to some CPAs, some closing agents or closing attorneys, closing title companies, find out if they do business the right way. and pretty much I've been in this market, so I know all the real estate agents and know who I want to work with. So I found out who I want to work with. I sit down and I talk with them, and I go through a whole script of questions that I want to do. And I got that script from Dennis Black. So I did this interview. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dennis Black.
No, but let's talk about him in this script you have.
Okay, and then I go through the whole script, interview, and at the end of the interview, it sort of it's whether you want to do business with. You kind of put the realtor and say, do we have a basis of doing business? And they either say yes or no. And if they say yes, then we set up on a marketing campaign with my marketing assistant. We go ahead and market to them on a weekly basis for the first quarter, for the first 3 months. And then we market to them after that every month after that.
Well, what do you mean specifically by that?
We send information to them on different loan programs. We send them little gag gifts or quotes or different types of. We sit down and say, okay, what do we want to do for the next 6 months to send to these people, and we write down what we want to send to them. We got to be in front of them, like you say, whether it's via the fax, the email, the U.S. mail, or in front of them, physically.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't stay in front of the real estate agent, either physically, fax, email, or U.S. mail, then I will be forgotten. So I gotta constantly stay in front of these people and maintain this relationship. For instance, I know you know Rod Flowers. He gave me a great idea, and this is all about talking to different real estate agents. I guess different lenders. This is you get ideas from different ones, and this is why you're setting up this interview, I guess, so people can listen. I got to talk to Rod Flowers. He brings his top agents to I think it's Peter Lowe's seminars.
Mm-hmm, sure.
So which is coming up.
Which is true. He does. Yeah, Zig Ziglar and those guys.
So as a reward to these agents, we're going to be sitting in the 14th row. We're going to have breakfast with Zig Ziglar, and we're going to have lunch with Elizabeth Dole, with some of my top agents,
mm-hmm.
and 8 of them. So I'm going to bring them, take a van, drive to Baltimore, and that's going to be one of the things I do for them. But doing this for them, hopefully will solidify our relationship and increase my volume of business.
Yeah, and they're not very expensive, although they do pack them in. I know Zig Ziglar, you can get out there and sign up early for, like $49 bucks. The last one I went to was in the, I don't know, like Cap Center or something in Washington, and they have about, 30,000 people sitting in there, and the speakers all make a fortune. Bill Bennett's an old buddy of mine, and he's one of the speakers on the circuit, and I think he collects like $30,000 for talking for an hour. So they are able to get the very top talent in the country. And those who have not, and I've talked about this before, those that have not gone to some of these and listened to people like Zig Ziglar, you really put yourself at a disadvantage. There is some question on retention rates and, what do you really retain? But I tell you, for those couple of hours, you really are in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think you take stuff back from that.
Well, my point is that, hopefully it increases their business, but hopefully it increases their business with me.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We're going to have an hour trip up to Baltimore. So we got an hour in the van talking. I'm sure we'll just talk about nothing but shop. We have all day seminar. Well, I'll take them out to dinner. We have an hour ride back. So it's like an all day thing. And when do you get that opportunity to spend all day being pumped up with the people you want to do business with?
Right.
You don't. So I think Rod gave me a great idea, and I acted on it right away when I heard about these.
Mm-hmm. Have you done this yet, or you just?
I'm doing it coming up May 9th.
Yeah, and how many people do you have going that are committed?
9 realtors.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
that's excellent. You're right, because you're spending quality time.
Exactly.
And quality time spells relationship time.
Yeah, I hope so.
And I know so. And when something goes wrong, instead of a realtor just kind of shutting you off, lots of times that relationship thing comes into play.
Yep, that's exactly. Yeah, good point. That's exactly right. They go back on the relationship rather than you can go to them and say, hey, this person didn't tell me anything, or this person didn't tell me, that he had child support or didn't do, whatever. So it would come back on the relationship.
Mm-hmm. What kind of database do you keep?
I use ACT, and
there's a trend here. I don't mean to interrupt, but for those listeners out there that do a lot of the classes, ACT seems to be, without question, the number one database for people to use. I know I use it very successfully. I couldn't live without it. I got 700 people, and I couldn't. There's just no way.
Yeah, we're just getting up and running with it. Unfortunately, I wish I would have kept it when I first started. And we're doing our mailers with it. We're doing our keeping our mailers on a weekly basis, or our post closing. We're doing that with it. I'm not using it as effectively as I'd like to use it, but I'm sure it's going to improve with time.
Yeah, it is. It's a very powerful tool, and it integrates with a lot of different programs now, from Outlook to it's almost any of the Microsoft products, and it really is a very, very versatile list right now. The feature I like about ACT the best for those that are listening out there are the two main features they have, where you literally can set up a new contact, and they have preset fields, and then obviously they have designer fields that you can set up, and which are very easily just go down to edit and set up your new field and name it, and then they have where you can switch over to the list of all your contacts, and that by the click of a button, you can sort by company or you can sort by individual. And just being able to flip back and forth between those two things, and the fact that you can add individual notes to each account, I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, one of the things that I hope to do is, I haven't done this yet, is to be able to sort by company of people you've done loans for, and then then attack the human resource person, HR person, and say, hey, I've done this many loans in this company. I think we need to do some more, and this is how we plan on doing more with you, and giving certain benefits to the HR person to incent her or him.
Yeah, you can do that by setting up, this isn't a computer lesson here, but you can do that by setting up subgroups, groups, and you'll find out that you can do that very easily with a flick of a button. So, well, that's good that you use that kind of a database and you use it to your advantage for mailings. But I'd like to get back into the realtor relationship. What do you do for people in the office, such as secretaries and managers? How do you deal in your relationships with them?
In the real estate office?
Yeah.
Well, you definitely want to keep a relationship with them, even if you're not doing business with them.
How do you do that?
I guess one of the funniest things that Deborah Jones, and I've learned this through Deborah Jones, is that when you got Betty Barracuda, I guess she says right at the front gate, you want to make sure that you take care of Betty Barracuda. So if you walk into an office to drop something off, a status sheet, something to get in front of the realtors, whatever you're dropping off to them, you always want to sit and take a few minutes and spend time with the receptionist. She is the gatekeeper. She will make your life miserable, or she'll make you very happy. And I have to say, with all the secretaries, I have a very good relationship with all the receptionists in the area. They are the gatekeepers. It is so important to make sure that you stay with them. I haven't done anything particularly, to give them or anything like that. I've just maintained a very nice relationship. So often people yell at them and don't even talk to them. They just say, hey, put me through. It's rarely where somebody sits and actually talks to them. And the brokers the same way. You sit down and talk with the brokers. I've been to several, sat on several committees with the Board of Realtors and just had great conversations with the brokers.
I want to stop you there because when we hit a good idea that I haven't heard before, even though I know this stuff is done, I'd like to delve into that. I think that's a real good idea, and I wondered if you get into that as far as dealing with realtors on their level on some of the committees. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me about it. how you went about doing it and what you do.
One of the, you just volunteer. It says, hey, you go to the executive person in charge of the real estate board and say, where would be an opportunity for me to meet some realtors? You're not going to be, it's tough to meet them in a setting when Betty Barracuda's at the door, but it's great to meet them when they volunteer for a committee at the Board of Realtors. So you can sit on the finance committee, you can sit on the education committee, you can sit on all the committees if you want, but you don't want to overdo it because you really want to give your 100% to the committee. I got Rod Flowers sits on the social committee, so he does some great things for the community as bringing the Board of Realtors in the community front. But I mainly just sit on the education committee. I teach realtors about finance. So I teach at the local college, the finance class, to get your license for the real estate.
Another great idea.
Yeah, so we do that, and it's just another way to get in front of people to talk to them. And it's just good. It's just giving back to a community that has given you so much. That's what I feel.
You've triggered something. You triggered a whole bunch of ideas here that have not been mentioned in previous interviews. Not that they're not done. It's just that everybody has a different way. And that is, it triggers a memory in me, and that is years ago, I knew somebody who really had a mortal lock on teaching some of the new agents for some of the large real estate firms. They would have, classes, free classes to train realtors. At those, back in those days, a lot of the firms like Long and Foster and whatever did not have their own mortgage subs and used those people. And it was pretty easy, and I was a pretty good teacher at the time, and I used to do a lot of that teaching, and I knew a lot of people that did it, and they just met an incredible amount of realtors. If you think about it, that's their first contact that they have.
Right. That's exactly right.
So I think those of you out there that are looking to do something and increase your business, going to some of the realtors that have training programs is a perfect. Going to some of the community colleges. A lot of the community colleges in some of the larger areas. I know Washington has some major junior colleges that have night classes in real estate. Some of the communities in McLean, Virginia, for example, they have the McLean Community Center that has real estate classes, where people sign up for $20, and these are great venues to teach. And if you can teach, you can really, if you're a loan officer and you have the ability, what I call the gift of the yap, and you can get out there and talk to people, that's your fortune.
Great avenue. It's a great avenue to get out there and get business or just to give back to the community.
What's a typical day for you? Do you structure, where I'm coming from is, do you structure your day in any way? And how do you run your week?
Actually, a week, it would be a typical week is I try to take 2 appointments a day, and 2 loan applications a day. I try to talk to 4 prospects a day, and to set the appointments for the next week. I want to make sure the marketing material gets out on a weekly basis. And I structure my week more like I'm always in the office on Monday and Friday, and I try to keep the appointments around 11 and 4 o'clock. I try not to take too many appointments after hours or Saturdays, but in this business you just have to do that sometimes. People coming out of town, I know I'm taking one this Saturday for somebody who's coming out of town. They're only here on the weekend. It shouldn't be any more than 15 minutes because I've already FedExed the application. They just want to meet me face to face to drop it off. The typical day, I sit down. I'm not as good as I'd like to be at this. Time blocking is a major thing that you need to do, and that I don't do it as well as I should. Sit down and actually say, okay, this is my day. This is what's going to happen. I do use the Franklin Planner, and I put down the most important things to do, and then I mark them with A, B, and C, and then I mark them from 1 to 10 or 1 to 15 or whatever. I do that, but I don't do the time block as much as I should. Are you familiar with the time block?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't do that, which I really wish I do. And it's just a matter of habit, I guess, and I just haven't fallen into the habit.
But it's what works for you. I mean, some people can get so anal retentive, they're trying to plan their last minute, and that doesn't work for certain personalities. But it depends the amount of structure that you can live with, and it makes sense for you. There's some people out there, young loan officers, people who don't have a lot of focus or direction. They need a methodology, and this sort of gives it to them.
So a typical day is I get in fairly early, and
we're doing this interview at 6 in the morning.
That's right.
So
we want to make sure we get in early and see what's on the calendar. Or a lot of people do it the night before, but I do it in the morning. I see what's on the calendar, see what people are meeting, and make sure that I get everything set for them. So when they come in, I like having my applications filled out before they even come in. So when people are fairly impressed when you got the whole application already filled out and all that you got to do is sign, and I try to make it more of a getting to know you meeting rather than an application. I already took the application over the phone, and it only takes 15 or 20 minutes for me, not even really to fill out the 1003, and the rest of the time we copy documents or ask them to copy before they come in and fill out the paperwork. And a lot of times I only spend 15 minutes, and I have an assistant actually goes in and maybe does the total application or fills out the rest of the documentation that needs to be filled out. I try to do most of that myself, but if you do have a lot of applications during the week, or a lot of telephone calls to return, or a lot of pre-quals, it's hard to get to spend that quality time with the people.
And yet the quality time is ultimately to your benefit in terms of getting repeat business and establishing that relationship.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line. I talked to somebody last night. Actually, I talked to Jeff Lake, who's probably number 3 or 4 in the country, and just he visits everybody, even if he doesn't finish an app, and I think he does 800 and something a year. He makes a point of sticking his face in front of everybody. Even if it's hello, shake your hand, how's your kid, and here's the lolly popping out. He gets that face time.
That's exactly, and that's where I actually got that from, was Jeff Lake, to actually go in and do the 15-minute high-quality interview, getting to know the people, and telling them exactly where he feels or where I feel they should be in terms of the loan, and then have somebody else say, hey, and this is Peter. Peter's going to come in and fill out the rest of the paperwork with you. And this is Kenya, and Kenya's going to go ahead and fill the paperwork. But if you have any questions, contact me, and then have Nancy make sure we stay in touch with them through the mail. And I have all my faces on all my stationery. It's on my business cards. So even though I only spend 15 minutes with them, I'm in contact with them through the mail. Email now, and we're hooking that up through ACT. We're getting everyone's email, and we're going to set up a mass emailing to our past clients.
I'm making there is a company. It's called RadicalMail.com, and they have an interesting application where you can send it. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't cost a little bit of money, and I'm not even saying it's the right application for you, but just to show you where those kind of applications are heading. They have a program now where you can do mass mailings by email, and as an attachment, put on either an audio or an audio and video display for whatever product or whatever message you want to get across. So when they take the email, and if they're using Real Player or Windows Media Player, that automatically pops up, and all of a sudden they're getting an audio and visual. It's right attached to the email. So as time goes on, these things are going to become much more important. I can see a situation where, you do a little audio and video, and you take it over, have it encoded, uploaded, and attach it to all your emails, and you're sending emails out, and now they're seeing your pretty face and you talking about, there's been a huge drop in the interest rate, and, now's the time to consider refinancing.
Yeah, sure. RadicalMail.com.
RadicalMail.com. So I just, there's new technology coming out every single day.
Right, exactly. On top of it.
Let me ask you, when you're dealing with your realtors, you say that you take them out and you try and get FaceTime in front of them. Are there any other tricks that you use? That's a liberal use of the word tricks, but any other ideas that you might be able to pass on to our audience out there that you use?
I try to. I don't know if you've ever heard of Greg Frost. I try to.
Sure.
I try to stay in front of them. Or make it. When you, in your marketing campaign that you want to set up for the year, you also set up meetings with them. I mean, just face-to-face meetings, lunches and breakfast with these real estate agents you want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I say, hey, I just want to, a friendship. It doesn't have to be a business interview. Business always comes up, of course, but I mean, just over lunch or breakfast or something where you want to get out and meet and talk to them and reward them with that.
Can I add something here? I usually try not to interject. I end up interjecting all the time, only because I have so much time in the business.
Right.
But you've raised another one that I happen to really like. It's one of my favorites. You're the first to mention it, and that's the use of breakfast. There are a lot of realtors out there who would not give you the time of day at 10 o'clock. I mean, you just can't even get hold of them. They don't want to talk to you. But 7 o'clock breakfast, they're more than happy to meet you. And the reason that this has a certain validity, you will find that the major high-tech businessmen up in the Northern Virginia and Maryland tech corridors, their big meetings are over breakfast. You know, they get together at 6:30 or 7, and they do their thing, and at 8 o'clock they're out on their business day. But there is a quality hour in there.
I agree. It's breakfast is a great time to meet people.
Mm-hmm. And you and I are early. We both get up at 5, and so we have plenty of time to do that. Those of you that get up at 9, forget what we just said. go towards the dinner deal.
Well, I like getting home and having dinner with the family, so it's breakfast is much better for me.
Do you structure time with your family on purpose?
Yeah, I do. Actually, my wife has implemented a great weekly calendar for me where she says, "Hey, just have you home on Tuesdays at 5:30 and Friday at 5:30." And so I get to get home 2 days a week. And on Wednesday mornings, what I do is I spend quality time with my daughters while my wife does Bible study. So I do that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great time.
Yeah, I have to say this too. We're talking about it, but it's really meant for our listeners out there. Talking to people like Rod Flowers, who are very heavy producers, and a lot of producers out there, you'd be surprised at the amount of people who really do set aside family time. It's very important for them, and they make it happen. And they make it happen each and every week. I believe it was Rod or Ed Navarro, one of them told me that they set aside 3 nights a week where he's home and has dinner and plays with his kids. That's absolute and irrevocable.
That's right. It's in your time block. It has to happen. Just because that's the most important relationship. From that relationship, to me, stems all your other relationships. If that relationship is not being worked on, then everything else can fall apart. So you need to make sure you keep that focused. For those people that are married, I guess.
Yeah, for the single people, ignore all that we're talking about. Maybe that becomes date night or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
Happy hour time. Whatever works for you. I guess is the point on this. We focus a lot on realtors, but there's another area too, and I'm just curious whether you have formed any relationships with CPAs and financial planners and attorneys and title companies. And do you have any other venues that you bring in business, or are you looking to get business from?
Yeah, I actually have, and that's another thing I've done, and also is to focus on avenues that aren't currently being focused on by my competition, and that's just what you said: CPAs, tax attorneys, or trust attorneys, and human resource people. I walked into, it was so funny, I walked into a human resource last week.
You walked into where?
A human resource.
Mm-hmm.
I had got an appointment with a human resource person. Walked in and I said, And she says, well, what are you doing? Why are you sitting in front of me? I was like, well, how many mortgage lenders have you spoken to in the last year? And they said, none. I said, that's why I'm talking to you. I mean, you're going to hire 350 people. You just told me you're going to hire 350 people in the next 2 to 3 years. And I need to be in front of you. And you're going to bring a lot of these people in out of town.
Oh, well, that's like finding a diamond.
Exactly. So, and she doesn't talk to anybody. So I'm going to be on her intranet site. My site is going to be connected to her site. Or linked.
You're going to have a link? Great.
Yeah, to her intranet site, so it's just inside the company.
Even better.
Even better, so yeah. So
they have firewalls, keep all the others out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'll be able to offer it, and we've offered substantial discounts for people who are going to be dealing with it.
That's just a great idea. Let's focus. I mean, once in a while I get excited on something that I really like, and I really like this. As far as going out to company human resource people. This is another. I told you when we started, I tell everybody, usually off tape, that I have never done an interview, at least to my knowledge, where someone has not brought up something new. All the more reason to listen to as many of these as possible. I think this is a great idea, and I wondered if you talk about how you went about that. I think it would be a great case study.
Well, I tell you what, it's.
I don't want to know the name of the company. Okay. Only because you might get a lister that comes in and behind you.
Yeah, I think hopefully we've established a relationship with this company. I think that you set the stage for that. I'm going to be offering discounts to your customers, so I hope that we get most of your business, and that if somebody else comes in and tries to work with you, that you'll feel comfortable working with me. And the thing is, you start off doing five or six loans within that company, and then you go to the HR person and say, listen, I've done 5 or 6 loans. Ask these people if they like doing business with me. I mean, you're only going to be able to go to that person if you've done a good job for the current clients in the company. And so I got the appointment saying, listen, I've met 5 people. I've helped them do loans. I'd like to meet you.
Wow. So you had a good reference point to start with.
Exactly. But it was still tough to get that appointment. Very difficult to get that appointment. And then I conduct a very similar interview with her as I conduct with real estate agents. And you ask them lead questions and questions that you know the answers, hopefully already. Questions like, if there was a way that you could find out what your current employees need, would that be something you're interested in? And of course, it's yes. And then you go in and say, hey, then we ought to do this, this, and this to help out your current employees, because their biggest fear is turnover.
Yeah, retention is absolutely.
So you want to make sure that you play to that card, is that turnover is, I can create less turnover for you. And how do you create less turnover? Make them buy a house. Someone's not going to quit because they got a house payment.
Mm-hmm. Especially in a smaller town where maybe they don't have as many options to do that. I once saw some figures on retention and retraining people, and I think it's somewhere around 10 to 1 in terms of having to bring someone new from the outside, training them from the get-go, and all the money and time that's wasted doing that. It's something like a 10 to 1 ratio money-wise, so it absolutely pays to retain people.
Absolutely.
What do you do in your relationship with this person that runs the human resources department?
We set up the same sort of marketing campaign. We want to make sure we stay in front of them. We've got a nice package we give them to all their people. We just want to stay in touch with them. We give them ideas. We give them ideas on how to help make their life easier. And they may know this stuff already, but it's nice to hear it anyway. So we try to give them stuff that makes their life easier.
Do you get some positive feedback from her?
Yeah, I got really positive feedback. This is probably my second or third company I've done that with, and yeah, I've got really good feedback from her. It's great. And then,
so you do this with more than one company?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we try to. We try to. I try to get in there. Try to get in there to a lot of different companies, but some of the bigger companies, they just don't want to hear it. So you go to the smaller companies or the companies that are going to potentially grow.
I'd like to interrupt you here, actually. Why do you think they don't want to hear it? Is that they're already part of a relocation network, or
maybe? I don't know. I haven't. That's a good question. I guess I got to ask that question myself.
Yeah, get out there and do that today.
I will do that. I'll get back to the next interview.
I'll play boss to you today. Get out there and find the answer.
I will find that answer because really, what is because then
that is a short-term goal.
Yeah, and then you got to structure the question so that they can't refuse you. Well, I know, like, try to get in a GE, and they have their own mortgage company, GMAC.
Oh, sure.
So, but I mean, that's one of the biggest plants here is GE, and I've done a ton of loans for people in there, but they just don't want to. They don't want me to set up seminars in their plant.
Well, sure. That's because they're going to do it. Another great idea. This is probably not the time on the tape to do it, but I was interviewing somebody recently, and we spent quite a bit of time on and what has triggered this comment is you're saying that they don't want to let you in the joint to give a seminar, and that's really because I can tell you right now because they have their own sub. And they want to put all the business through them. But setting up seminars in little hotels and bringing in experts and whatever, it's a great way to get those people in.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we do. Is we set up relationships with other attorneys, CPAs, and then we bring them in and have them speak to the clients. What do they want to hear about? Do you want to hear about wills? Well, we got a great person who deals in trust and wills, so we'll bring that attorney in and talk to him.
Yeah, that's another good idea, too. This is the first time someone has raised not the idea of bringing an attorney in, but it's always been in the context of talking about real estate. What you're talking about is something tangential, but I think has value, and that is bringing people in to talk about different things that gets the people in and you still get your message across, too. I like that. I think that's a good idea. What about your relationship with CPAs? How'd you go about getting that business?
That's funny. Through church, actually. I have one of the big accounting firms. We work with one of the biggest loans I ever got was through a CPA, so biggest construction loan. And so I just talk to him and say, listen, who do you know that I need to know? Sort of mentality. And then I've given my business and send clients. Because when you come into town, you ask the client, when a person comes into town, you ask the client if he's happy with the CPA. And if they say no, then you have an avenue to send some business to, or if they need a CPA, you have an avenue to send business to him or to her. So, and you can set up a relationship with 2 or 3 or 4 different CPAs, because you're doing probably, you want to do 30 or 40 loans a month, and you can structure it so that you get 3 or 4 leads for each of these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So you can set up many marketing groups.
That's you raised something, all sorts of little nuggets here. I wish we had more than our allotted 45 minutes here, but lots of times you hear about sending people to maybe an attorney or settlement attorney. I like your idea of asking people that you're dealing with if they're happy with their CPA, or because for example, if you can send somebody to a realtor of a previous client, maybe the realtor isn't around anymore, whatever, if you can send a client to a realtor, that realtor will love you forever because you're talking big dollars on their commission.
Exactly. Yeah, and I got that from, I can't remember who I got that from somebody. It's not certainly, a lot of these things that I'm talking about are ideas that you get from just talking to people, setting up that mentor group, talking to people like like Don Ehrman and Rod Flowers and Todd Duncan and these people that have been in the business yourself. You've been in the business for a long time, so I brought up while we've been talking, I've already brought up RadicalNail.com. I want to see what that thing's all about. So,
yeah, they have a website. You can actually look it up.
I'm looking it up right now, and it's just I haven't looked at it actually, but I've brought it up. So when we get off this interview, I'm gonna actually take a look at it and see if I can glean any ideas from that.
Yeah, I think their website is set up so that it's a hard time to download stuff in print. Kind of an interesting concept till you got to actually be there. But I got that idea from one of my advisors who I went to Georgetown with, a guy named Charlie Scuba. And he is an expert on advising internet companies on how to market their products. So it's amazing how these little things kind of trickle back and forth. It has not escaped my attention as we have talked here that you've thrown out at least 6 names that I recognize personally, some of them very high-powered loan officers, some I've actually interviewed, and some I know about, and Todd Duncan and some others. You seem to put a lot of emphasis, if I could kind of analyze you for a second, on really listening to the people who have been successful, whether they're motivational or whether they're in your business, and picking their brains and picking bits and pieces. I wondered if you kind of comment on that. It's kind of a backhanded compliment, but nonetheless.
Well, thank you. And the reason why I do that is because I've always, I guess it's pretty much grown up, I've always listened to just older people. Why try to recreate the wheel when somebody already has? So I can't remember who told me, but it's always try to listen to other people instead of trying to go out and make it hard on yourself, because it can be a hard road if you want to do it on your own. If you want to think of your own ideas, if you want to do, it's just tough. It's tough out there. So you got to make sure that why go ahead and recreate it when you can
mm-hmm.
talk to a Jeff Lake, or you can talk to a Don Ehrman or any of these guys. They've been down the road much more, and they've hit the bumps. They can tell you where to avoid it. I mean, it was funny. Don Ehrman said to me, "You're going to make the mistake on an FHA loan," and he told me the mistake. And sure enough, a month later, I made it. And he said, "I told you, don't worry about it. I told you you're going to make it." So, so it's interesting. So yeah, I definitely would highly recommend to call people. And these top producers, I tell you one, that they will take. You don't think they have time for you. But Rod Flowers cleared his whole schedule one day where I can visit him. Ed Navarro cleared his whole schedule one day where I can just sit in his branch and talk to his people.
Mm.
It was just an incredible amount of time. I spent the night at Ed's, actually 2 days at Ed's, with my staff. I brought my staff up to Ed Navarro's office, spent the night with him, had dinner with him, and it was just, these guys just want to teach and learn and help you get successful.
I think there's a certain, I think you find this in general. I'm not saying it's always there. I got a name or two that comes to my mind. But I think most people that are very successful out there, they are more than willing to help. They really, they want to share.
Absolutely. I agree.
And it's kind of funny that they're the very top people that want to do it, those with the least amount of time. And they're willing to take more time to help that. Maybe that's part of the human condition. Maybe it's one of the really nice things about our business. Well, I think I'm going to end on that high note, because I think we've gone over a lot of points that are very valid, and I can't thank you enough for taking your time to talk about them. As we say earlier, sometimes you don't think you have a lot to talk about, but once you get in there and start talking specifically about some of the things that you do, I like your idea immensely of going to human resource departments. As I said, in all the interviews I've done, not one person has brought it up, but I know after people that listen to this today, there's going to be a lot of people running out to human resource centers. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me, Mark, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.